One issue that colleges and universities continually wrestle with is defining the relationship between faculty and students. For the most part, faculty believe that they have spent a lifetime developing expertise. They aren't called doctors for nothing, and their job is to impart this information to students. In recent years, this has led to a debate. Should the faculty member be the sage on the stage or the guide on the side? With that kind of rhyme, it's almost become a cliched question, with ardent advocates taking each side. But not at New College. That question was answered more than 50 years ago, and the result was a system almost unique in American higher education. It is a significant part of New College's legacy that we are highlighting today as we examine what the college accomplished in the 50 years from 1970 to 2020 and beyond. Even before 1970, the college's first chief academic officer, Dr. John Gustad, set out the principle, and I quote, "The best education results from the active confrontation of two first-class minds," unquote. Academic reformers embraced that idea as they worked to create a high-quality liberal arts college in Sarasota. The concept of two people challenging one another to think hard about important questions captured an enduring principle of the college. So, a teacher and a student were supposed to challenge each other's thinking. How different that was from the prevailing model of American higher education. Most assumed that the learned teacher disseminates knowledge for the student to receive. The student's job is to demonstrate that they had absorbed this knowledge, measured by their grades, papers, exams, and college transcripts. But New College believed that the prevailing system induced passivity among students, who became merely consumers rather than actors in their own education. The college found that just consuming information did not lead to mastery of a subject. That required deeper understanding, created by engagement with the ideas and questions at stake. New College saw students as lifelong learners who needed to develop critical thinking skills that emerged from dialogue and even disagreement. Challenging ideas could happen not only between students and faculty, but also between students. Two peers in serious conversation that could happen in the dining hall as well as in the classroom or anywhere else on campus, even at the swimming pool. While this was a challenge for New College faculty, it was also an opportunity. Many long-term professors at other colleges often found themselves in a rut. They stood up in front of a class and gave the same lectures year after year. They became rote performers, dispensing grades on a set formula. Where was the challenge in that? New College saw it differently. Professors certainly had accumulated great knowledge and wisdom in their careers, but a professor should not think that her education was complete. And perhaps by engaging with students who may be challenging her thinking, the professor could learn something new while helping the student work toward mastery. New College's philosophy began with the contract system, what the student was going to accomplish in the upcoming semester, and how that process should be evaluated. A contract, by definition, is negotiated between two parties with the implication that there is rough equality of status between the parties and that they share responsibility for the outcome. From the moment the students arrived on campus as first years, they were required to meet with a faculty advisor for a probing discussion of their goals and how the professor could help them succeed. This demanded self-reflection on the part of the student right from the start, which was a critical step in developing habits of mind, paving the way for lifelong learning. The New College system required students to complete 3 independent study projects beyond regular coursework. This meant the students had to delve into their interest or do something on their own that fit into their evolving goals. This brought the faculty advisor into a process to help guide the research and perhaps learn something from it. This independent research culminated in a senior thesis that frequently was the quality of a master's thesis. It often opened doors for the student's acceptance at a top graduate school. The student had to defend the thesis before a panel of 3 professors and often other students. The student had to show that the research was worthy of deep intellectual engagement and be ready to defend the findings. It was all part of the concept of intellectual community, where everyone learns from one another by testing and redefining their ideas. No one should have expected that New College would have large lecture classes. That was the opposite of its academic model. In small classes, students couldn't hide if they hadn't done the reading or if they weren't prepared to engage by asking and answering questions instead of just taking notes on what professors said. As an example, consider the pedagogy of Professor Andrea Domino, who taught seminars in American fiction. She was a master of dealing with a class of students reluctant to participate. On days that were too hot and too tiring, when students were not keen to engage, she would throw out a question and then just sit there as the seconds ticked by. She was not going to fill that time herself. After what became an uncomfortable silence, finally one student and then another would chime in. This was her way of teaching the students that making the class a success was not just her job, but the responsibility of everyone in the class. In addition to courses, students took part in tutorials, either as an individual or in a small group. These tutorials put the faculty member and student on an equal footing as co-creators, collaborating in developing reading lists. The tutorials were the ideal setting for everyone to learn from one another, faculty and students alike, and to challenge one another. In the words of former President Mike Michelson, New College faculty members were, quote, fellow learners who simply were further along the learning journey than their students, unquote. By opening up and listening, they played the role of co-learners or guides. As a result, New College faculty often discovered new intellectual purposes that led to research and teaching far from the field of their original training. As participants in tutorials and small seminars, and as advisors of deeply researched independent studies, faculty learned from their students, even as they taught. A case in point is Dr. David Smiley, who arrived at New College in 1969 to teach developmental psychology. He became interested in developmental influences on behavior, not only in humans, but also in other species. After retiring from New College, he joined Duke University's zoology department to pursue his interest in evolutionary biology. Smiley's intellectual transformation happened because New College constantly challenged professors to expand their knowledge and not just rest on their doctoral studies and disciplinary research. The college nurtured a culture in which engagement was supported. In many elite colleges and universities, Darwin seems to provide the role model, survival of the fittest. These are colleges where in the first meeting of the freshman class, some professor or administrator says, look to your left, look to your right. At the end of this year, one of you will be gone. That kind of pressure makes learning a short-term competition, instead of striving for deep learning and mastery of the subject. No student would take a risk with that attitude. New College instead saw itself as a learning community. As former President Pat Oker noted in her inaugural address, this sense of safety and belonging was crucial to education. She said, quote, learning of the highest order takes place when we feel supported and loved, when we can take risks and be vulnerable. It is then, not in times of great anxiety and stress, that our brains are most receptive to new ideas and new ways of thinking. So while New College promoted the confrontation of first-class minds, it paradoxically required that the classrooms be safe in a fundamental way. To work towards mutual engagement, the challenge had to come with a sense that they all belonged to the same community, with mutual goals that allowed them to challenge each other's assumptions in spirited debate. Speaking of spirited debate, that immediately calls to mind American politics professor Eugene Lewis. He regularly challenged his students' taken for granted assumptions, not just about politics, but about what they were doing in the classroom. In one seminar, as the class discussed redistributive policy, Lewis said that most redistribution in the United States actually goes to the middle and upper classes rather than to the poor. He directed the students to look out the window at a maintenance worker named Robert Dixon. Lewis challenged the students. Why should Robert's tax dollars be used to pay for your college education when many of your parents have much more money than Robert ever will? How do you justify taxing him so that you can sit here in this classroom while he is out there sweating in the Florida heat? That challenge stuck with some of his students for a lifetime. As fellow learners, faculty were unusually accessible outside the classroom to keep these discussions, debates, and arguments going. Professor Peggy Bates' Tuesday evening salons at her home on campus and Professor Lyndon Clough's Sunday afternoon teas drew students regularly. Faculty often hosted dinners with their advisees, and students got to know their professors as individual people. This afforded students and faculty the space to range more widely and to think together about difficult questions of learning and life. So yes, this model was disruptive of what Paulo Freire called the banking model of education, in which teachers make informational deposits into the minds of students. The collaboration of students and faculty at historic New College, rooted in shared goals and regard for one another as individual learners, provided a level of engagement that benefited generations of students and faculty. New College's legacy shouldn't just be remembered. It should serve as a model for what higher education can accomplish if traditional models are disrupted and new thinking can permeate to the upper reaches of academia. Thank you.